Hey there, everyone. Welcome back on board the Bitcoin SV train. Today we got an interview with one of the most passionate and also one of the most controversial figures in the Bitcoin SV community. I'm not talking about Craig S. Wright. I'm talking about Ryan X. Charles. Ryan founded a company called yours.org a couple of years ago and also more recently moneybutton.com. But he created a bit of a kerfuffle when he launched Paymail in Toronto recently at the CoinGeek conference. What was the big deal about that, and what's that about his religious experience that he had there? Check it out. Ryan X. Charles, thank you for joining me here today. How have you been?
Very good, wonderful. Happy to be here, John. Great to talk with you.
And you're in Argentina right now, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
What are you doing down there?
Well, so the Money Button team is three people. It's myself, I'm based in San Francisco, and Miguel and Oye are based in Argentina. So I'm basically just here working with them in person. My plan moving forward is probably I'll be actually spending quite a lot of time in Argentina, and probably moving into the future, we'll probably building out the team predominantly in Argentina, but also throughout the Americas. So yeah, I'll probably be spending a lot of time here in Argentina in the future.
Did you say there's only 3 people working for MoneyButton?
That's correct.
Really? The whole company is 3 people?
Yes, I know that people are surprised by that because we have a very high profile and very wide usage within the Bitcoin SV community. It's kind of a long story how we arrived at this situation, but yes, we're only 3 people, and we have some principles at the company which are basically, we hire very, very good people, and that has worked out for us. So we plan to continue doing that.
So I think the last time I spoke to you would have been around the end of 2017. So the Bitcoin Cash hard fork had happened, but not the SV hard fork. And a lot has happened since then. Like, you've obviously jumped on the, as they say, the Bitcoin SV train. And yeah, the rest is history.
So do you know what timing that was? Because like so much has happened. It's like, the whole thing has been a very continuous, sort of intense. It requires my full-time effort to even follow and understand and stay on top of what's going on. So trying to build this company amidst this sort of external turmoil has been a very, it's been a very interesting life experience to live through all of this stuff.
I bet, yeah. At what point did you decide, like, because I know you kind of went through Litecoin, and then you went through Bitcoin Cash, and it was all over the whole micropayments issue. So we probably don't need to rehash all that, but at what point did you decide, like, Bitcoin SV was going to be the one?
Sure, I'll briefly explain the background, and then I'll explain Bitcoin SV. So we originally started on BTC because, look, I'm like an OG Bitcoin guy. I go back to 2011, and one of the first things I did in studying Bitcoin was to read Satoshi Nakamoto, and I understood the original vision for Bitcoin. And over time, it became increasingly clear that Bitcoin was taken over by a different group of people that had a completely different idea for what Bitcoin was supposed to be. And by the end of 2017, I decided to exit BTC fully. And my company transitioned from BTC to LTC to BCH to BSV. And I won't explain everything because it would take like hours to go through all of that detail about how all of that stuff happened. But yes, we're on our 4th different ticker symbol. And we were actually the first company that switched to Bitcoin SV. In fact, even before InChain and CoinGeek said that they're going to start supporting Bitcoin SV as an independent chain from Bitcoin Cash during the hash battle, we actually announced support that we're going to go exclusive to Bitcoin SV. The reason for that is if you understand how it works technically, legally, economically, and I could go into all these details, Bitcoin SV is clearly the correct choice. And what will end up happening is every single other altcoin will die, including Bitcoin Cash, including BTC, including Ethereum. They have no future. And the people that are working on these things, unfortunately, don't actually take the time to study all of the details. It's not just cryptography. It's a lot of different things. You have to understand how all the pieces fit together, including the law, including economics. All these things that many of these people don't understand. They're going to end up losing a lot of money because a lot of scammers have created these giant pump and dump scams, including things like Ethereum. I don't think Ethereum is a scam, But
Hmm.
scammers have been involved in creating a giant valuation for Ethereum that makes no sense. And people are going to lose money. So we're on Bitcoin SV because it works. It's the closest thing we currently have to the original Bitcoin protocol. We are going to restore the original Bitcoin protocol completely by next year. And there was no problem to be solved. I mean, Satoshi solved it on day zero. It's a solved problem. We have internet money now. We don't need to reinvent it over and over and over again. We need to keep it the same so that we can build businesses. All we need to do is we need to grow it. We need to scale it. We do not need to change the protocol whatsoever. It was a completely solved problem. And all these other altcoins think they're improving things, but I can tell you point by point how they never even understood what Bitcoin was originally. So they don't realize that they're not improving anything. They're actually breaking important parts about how Bitcoin works. So there's simply no question whatsoever. We're on Bitcoin SV because it's the only one that has a chance. And it will succeed if we make it succeed.
Yeah. I think that the problem with Bitcoin and crypto in general has always been that there's a lot of scams and there's a lot of good but misguided intentions going on there. And that includes some of the people who are following the scams, some of the people who are following the legit chains. It's a real broad church.
Well, what ends up happening is a lot of the well-meaning people are themselves scammed. So I'll give you an interesting example. I believe that Vitalik was actually partially scammed because people actually used Ethereum as a way to create a giant pump. And Vitalik was not involved in pumping Ethereum, but Vitalik was created as the figurehead of Ethereum by pumpers. So they put Vitalik out in front because the scammers don't want you to know who they are. And I'm not really sure who they are, but they pumped the hell out of Ethereum to a valuation that made no sense at all. And it's not worth that much. I mean, the whole thing is fake as far as I'm concerned. It should have a radically lower valuation. It does not have the future that they pitch it to have. They think they're going to scale it, but they don't realize that they've actually built something that's intrinsically unscalable, and Bitcoin was the correct way to build it originally. Craig actually went through all of these types of ideas originally and dismissed the broken ideas before he created Bitcoin. So they don't realize that Craig is actually 10 years ahead of everybody else and basically just solved the problem. And so Ethereum, they went off and made what they thought was better, but they didn't even understand things like the Turing completeness and the scalability of Bitcoin originally. And they ended up actually breaking things. So Vitalik is a well-meaning person who did not try to scam anyone, but he was used by the scammers to scam people.
Yeah. Now, playing devil's advocate, I've heard people say the same thing about BSV. What's your immediate comeback to that?
Well, they always say stuff like that. So they always just say the exact opposite of reality. So they build this world where they say that Bitcoin SV is a cult. Bitcoin SV is the only one that isn't a cult. The entire remaining cryptocurrency industry is a giant cult bubble. So everything about it, like all these businesses, all these altcoins, every single one of them, they don't even realize it. They're the cult. The stuff they believe on crypto Twitter and crypto Reddit and all these publications make no sense. They clearly haven't actually studied economic technology law in a coherent, holistic way. So they're actually the cult. The cryptocurrency industry is a giant cult, and they project. A guy named Craig Mason, who I know from YouTube, Craig Mason uses the word projection. I believe that's the correct way to describe it. They accuse Bitcoin SV of being a cult because they're just trying to say something bad about it to attack it. They end up saying the very things that apply to themselves. The cryptocurrency industry is a cult. The cryptocurrency industry is the criminal thing. They're the frauds. They're the scammers. And they're projecting their own properties of themselves onto Bitcoin SV as a form of an attack.
Yeah, always accuse others of doing what you yourself are guilty of, I think is how the old saying goes.
Yes, that's what's happening.
Well, speaking of cults and other groups, clans, and religions, you went on YouTube last week and you talked about how you had a religious experience in Toronto.
Yes.
I know. I watched that video and I thought you were very earnest, and because I've spoken to you before, I know that you're deadly serious when you talk about that. But I think expressing that kind of emotion is likely to get you mocked by certain people. Do you care?
Well, it's annoying, but I also recognize recognize that it's actually important that someone like myself, who's in a position of strength, actually is honest and genuine, and give power to simply being honest about what my experience is. And when I created that video, which is completely honest, I mean, I think if you watch the video, it's very like, I didn't do anything irrational. I'm not a cult member. Just, it's a totally reasonable video. I'm simply describing my experience, and I was just being honest.
I think it was
a lot of people read me and started sharing their experience. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, I think it was a line where you said at that moment you thought Craig Wright was the second coming of Jesus Christ. I think that's kind of likely to trigger some people
in that moment, and I did believe that in that moment. I do not currently believe that. Right? I mean, that was, you have to appreciate what happened. Let me give some background. That was a very, very intense moment for me. So I'm opening up to the world and just sharing a vulnerable period in my life, because I have been working on this company for 3.5 years, and we finally had revenue.
Right.
I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, this entire time, finally, after all this time, this intense period of years working on this thing, we have revenue. And I can see the pieces, and everything I said in the video is correct. I was literally crying in the Uber on my way to meet Miguel and Oye, because I was thinking about how all the pieces fit together with Bitcoin, and we're going to be able to solve giant, important problems in the world. And I'm just being honest about that. And I knew that I was going to be attacked, but I've developed a tolerance, and I've learned to figure out what's going on and stuff like that and recognize what's really happening. I'm being attacked by people who are just assholes. The good people do not attack me when I say stuff like that. The good people actually connect with me. The good people actually send me messages and say, I too had an interesting experience and I wanted to share that with you. So by being completely honest about that, the bottom 20% of people, the people that are the biggest assholes, troll me. But the top 80% of good people understand that what I was saying was just honestly sharing my experience. And so they actually learn to trust me more by simply being honest and genuine about my experience.
Yeah, and I think people would appreciate that kind of openness too. I mean, that's one of the things I liked about the Bitcoin SV crowd. They, over time, I mean, when Bitcoin first started, the original Bitcoin, I used to really enjoy reading the more sort of philosophical articles, pieces by people like Daniel Kraywitz and stuff like that looked at it in the context of a future that we didn't quite understand yet. And I know other people didn't really get it. And then over time, the conversation just became all about the price or the scaling debate and, really immediate concerns. No one was looking at the big picture anymore. And I think that's one of the things that attracted.
There's a very good reason for that, because Satoshi stopped communicating publicly. Satoshi is Craig Wright. Craig Wright is Satoshi. We'll say this as much as we need to, and as this comes out in the mainstream media in the next year, this will become increasingly clear to the entire world outside of crypto that Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto. People that are not immersed in the misinformation on Twitter and Reddit, watch Craig and learn about Craig and realize the guy is obviously Satoshi Nakamoto, based on countless pieces of evidence. The reason why people in crypto Twitter and crypto Reddit don't believe that Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto is they are like deeply, deeply misinformed about what's going on, because Twitter and Reddit are entirely manipulated. Entirely. I mean, it makes no sense. You can look at any of the tweets that I create on my Twitter profile. And by the way, I've now fully exited Twitter. I had stopped reading it in January. Now I'm not even going to write to it anymore, because I don't even want to encourage anyone to use it. Twitter is completely manipulated. And the cryptocurrency industry takes Twitter seriously. They use Twitter as their identity. Every single one of them, they go to a crypto conference, they put their Twitter handle on there, they advertise that's their identity. Their Twitter handle is their identity. It is absurd because it is completely manipulated. Twitter is the primary platform the pump and dumper people use to manipulate people and confuse people. So what happened was Craig stopped explaining things to people because it started being taken over by criminals as early as 2010. In 2010, you had the creation of things like late 2010, early 2011, creation of things like Silk Road. And people started trying to figure out how to use Bitcoin for crime, which was the exact opposite of what Bitcoin was supposed to be about. Satoshi stopped communicating, and he went off and developed his IP and things like that in private. And finally, all these things are coming out now. But because Satoshi stopped explaining it, certain things were actually just lost in the discourse. As the terrible manipulators and scammers and criminals started taking over BTC, they eliminated arguments from Satoshi. They stopped reminding people about Moore's Law. Moore's Law was an important part of the argument from the very beginning. This isn't just about the software. This is about everything. It's about computers are going to get faster, and so we're going to be able to have bigger blocks. But that argument was lost by about 2015 or so. When people like myself would remind people, but Moore's Law, like we are going to have faster computers in the future, they would say, but we don't know that for sure. We don't know. But we do, because you can look at the entire history of the world and know that Moore's Law will continue. We will have faster computers. We will have more processors, more bandwidth, and things of the sort. And we will be able to have very, very, very large blocks. They eliminated that argument. That argument came from Satoshi, but they eliminated it because it threatened their view. It threatened what they wanted to do, which was to use Bitcoin for crime. They wanted to be able to do things like buy and sell drugs on the internet and for the government to not know about it. They wanted a logless network. They wanted a logless system where they can delete records about what happened so that you can buy drugs or sell drugs and there's no way for the government to ever know things like that. Now, if you like drugs, that's fine. This isn't about whether you like drugs or not. It's about if you create a network that encourages like an impossibility of record keeping and an impossibility of doing things like accounting and things like that, you're actually encouraging crime. You're encouraging things like terrorism and slavery. These things exist. You do not want a system that is untraceable, because the people that actually benefit from that are literally criminals. They are the lowest scum on the earth. Those are the people that use a fully anonymous currency. So these people over a long period of time twisted BTC, twisted the entire cryptocurrency industry into a giant criminal enterprise. I know this sounds very odd, and what I'm saying is somewhat extreme. Not everyone involved is a criminal. The criminals are just a small part of it, but a lot of people are manipulated by the criminals. They believe a bunch of mythology, and the criminals prevent you from studying things. Instead of letting you study the things that Craig is saying, they bash the hell out of Craig and make you feel afraid to even ask the question, is what Craig is saying true? They don't want you to actually research these things and think things through for yourself. They want you to just believe crypto Twitter and believe crypto Reddit and be a pawn in their game.
Yeah, and of course, as you said, Satoshi's absence from the scene for so long gave everyone a chance to mold Bitcoin into their own vision, or just try to persuade others.
They gave them a chance. They gave them a chance, but they didn't do it because they never understood how it even worked. So they screwed up their chance. Yes, they could have actually done it in a correct way, but what will happen in the coming 1 or 2 years, you'll see the ones that don't make sense technically, economically, legally, that includes BTC, will die. So they did have a chance and they took it over. And because they didn't understand what it was and how it worked, they broke it fatally. BTC will go to zero.
Right. And I'll just use that to segue onto the next point. When you started MoneyButton, you created a company and a system that actually used Bitcoin for a practical purpose, which is something that very few people have been able to do so far. And it's been pretty successful, as you said.
Yes.
And
that's because we're just creating a real business, because that's how Bitcoin works. Bitcoin is an economic system. The way it works is to create profitable businesses. This is how it scales. This is how it gets adoption. That is central to what it is. It is an economic system. All the people saying, no, it's a solution to a computer science problem, they're idiots. I mean, I need to say it plainly so that people understand. They're idiots. They don't understand. They understand computer science. They don't know anything about anything else. If they say it's a solution to a computer science problem, they're idiots. It is not. Bitcoin is an economic system. And the way it works is create value, trade with people. Every problem with Bitcoin can be solved with Bitcoin. You earn Bitcoin, you save Bitcoin, you spend Bitcoin. Just earn Bitcoin. You solve every single problem this way. That's what it is. It is an economic system.
So Bitcoin itself doesn't actually have an opinion. It's really just a medium, right? Almost the same as Twitter is just a medium. It's really the people and what they say on it that are going to make all the difference. So if
I think that the creator did have an opinion, and the creator is someone who now has 17 degrees. I don't know how many degrees he had when he first created Bitcoin, But Craig spent about a decade studying everything necessary to be able to invent Bitcoin. It took about 10 years. He became obsessed with the idea in about 1999, and by 2009 launched Bitcoin. So what it is Craig is very opinionated because Craig actually knows a lot of stuff. So it's actually two things. It's opinionated, but it's also the truth. Craig is opinionated about what is the right way to solve this problem. So it's like believing that the sun is hot, and everyone out there is saying, I'm not so sure. Is the sun really hot? And you're like, I'm telling you, the sun is hot. That's the truth. And I'm telling you, I passionately believe that the sun is hot. Well, Bitcoin is the right solution to this problem. It is true, and it's also something that you can be strongly opinionated about because people don't seem to understand and value it as well as they should yet, but they will. And so those of us that understand and take the time to research all of these things, all of the different pieces, it's not one field of study, it's everything. We're going to ultimately replace the entire internet, and ultimately this will create a foundation for the entire world economy. So ultimately everything that matters in your personal life that involves other people, which is just about everything that matters to you, is going to use Bitcoin. So it's both of those things.
So how can Bitcoin solve the Twitter problem?
Well, Twitter is going to solve its own problem by dying. Okay, so Twitter problem number one is it's completely fake. So, if you just think about it, imagine, put yourself a few centuries ago. What would you like to get a notification about? You would like to get a notification about when you earned money. Wouldn't that be the natural thing to be alerted about? Something of value? Twitter gives you notifications that are trash. Twitter gives you notifications that are designed to suck you in and make you addicted to their platform. So Twitter is going to solve its own problem by hooking everyone on fakeness. Everything about it's fake. It's not just fake information about cryptocurrency. It's fake notifications. It's stuff that isn't valuable to you. So for instance, the other day I was talking with some people in San Francisco, and I was talking with a guy who's telling me about how he is on a information diet. He's decided to consume less information. He's sick of all those notifications from Twitter, from Facebook, ... and so on. Well, the thing is, he's not on an information diet. He's on a misinformation diet. The information coming out of Twitter, Facebook, etc., are terrible. It's not real. The whole thing is fake. It's all about hooking you on engagement. They want you to be engaged on the platform, so they suck your personal data away from you and use that to deliver targeted ads to you. Has nothing to do with creating value for you. It has to do with creating value for those companies. They are taking away from their users. So Twitter is going to solve its own problem by accumulating all these hooked, addicted people to just nonsense, gibberish stuff on crypto Twitter and all these other things, politics and everything else. And what's going to happen is those people are not productive. You're losing 25 to 50% of your brain just trying to filter the trash and misinformation that you believe on Twitter and Facebook. And what will happen is those people will just lose. So if you spend all your time on Twitter and Facebook, all that's actually going to end up happening is you're going to not understand what's actually going on in the world. You should be reading books. You should be studying things. You should be learning new fields of study. But what's happening is these people are hooked on psychology. They're hooked on just graphics on their phone and vibrating phones and things like that, because that's all Twitter actually cares about. They don't care about informing you about the world. They care about hooking you so that you're engaged, so that they know all about you to deliver targeted ads. So they're going to solve their own problem. And what's going to happen is we're going to transcend Twitter. We are creating protocols on the original Bitcoin protocol that allow us to solve every single one of these problems in a way that simply doesn't even involve an app like Twitter at all. If you want to understand what's really going on in the world, you're going to use Bitcoin. And the way this works is everything you see on the blockchain is just better quality than what you see on Twitter. And as all of the content that actually has value migrates to the blockchain, Twitter is just going to accumulate everything that doesn't have value. And all that's going to be left are all those people that are hooked on fakeness, and they're just going to lose, and it will die.
It was never going to be a platform for people with, anything more than a goldfish attention span, because, it's got that, had that 140 character limit. Now 280, it's still not enough.
Well, Jack Lew, I'm sorry to Jack Lew. I'm angry at Jack Lew for other reasons. But Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter and Square, is the devil. Okay. Now I say that I don't believe he's literally the devil, but I am making a deliberate religious comparison. The guy is freaking evil. because he creates Twitter and Square. Both of these things are like polar opposite to what Bitcoin is. So
Right.
Jack Dorsey's out there misinforming people and then taking their money away. So Jack Dorsey, his whole life is dedicated to scamming people. I mean, he is like the center of all these terrible things that are going on. Now, I'm not trying to blame Jack Dorsey. I'm using him as a figurehead because he's very, very public. And I don't think he's necessarily at the center of any of these things. But he's the one who decided to like put himself at the center of all this stuff, CEO of Twitter and Square simultaneously. I mean, everything about what he's doing is learning everything about you and taking your money away. That's like everything about it. And not creating value for you, but scamming you and making you believe fake notifications on Twitter. Instead of earning money, they're sucking your transaction fees away and learning everything about you. And they're all about sucking your value away. So they're polar opposite to Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would describe all of social media in general. I think not just
Yes.
Twitter.
Well, Jack Dorsey is the worst one because of the very, very concentrated focus of Twitter on hooking you. Facebook has other stuff, and also Mark Zuckerberg is nicer. Jack Dorsey is like trying to create this platform that's very concentrated on just the lowest quality trash that all it is attention grabbing trash. It hooks you and nothing of substance whatsoever on Twitter. Anytime you see something that matters on Twitter, it's not on Twitter. It's a link to something else. Twitter has none of the stuff that matters. It's just the attention grabbing trash. So he's concentrated evil.
Yeah, that's right. I remember you said Twitter was concentrated evil, at the center of all evil, in your last video as well. It can be useful for discovery, though, I found. Like, if you just want that quick update, that news update, sometimes there is useful info in there. A link to something.
It is not useful for that, because what ends up happening is you think you're getting these news updates, but what's actually happening is your brain is being sucked away. You are better off simply not using it. You're going to get the updates that actually matter by not using it. When you use Twitter, you get updates that matter, and you get mostly updates that don't matter, and they suck your brain away. You're dedicating 25 to 50% of your brain to this stuff. I'm not joking. Like, what ends up happening is your brain is filtering trash. Well, like, what is it? Like, every time you feel like, what is that terrible thing? It's always Twitter. Always Twitter. So what ends up happening is you're not benefiting. Yes, it has those news items. Everybody's on Twitter tweeting, but that's not, you're not benefiting. You're losing so much by having that other brain power sucked away just to defend yourself from trash that you lose. You don't gain by reading Twitter. You're better off getting those notifications any other way than being on Twitter.
I think I've said similar things about mainstream network news in the past as well. But where do you go if you want the latest? Like, if you want to hear what's going on right now, where do you go personally?
Well, it depends on what now in what area. So I read the Wall Street Journal as my source of general news. There are many other great publications that I don't necessarily recommend the Wall Street Journal, but I would just say read media. You can read newspapers. You can consume any sort of other form of media. In the Bitcoin SV world, I rely on Metanet.icu to be my primary source of news for the Bitcoin SV world. And it depends on the subject matter. So basically, in other words, do your research and be willing to work at it. If you are relying on Twitter to accurately inform you about what's going on, you're being scammed. You're losing value. You're not gaining.
All right. Well, let's see how many people take that to heart. I would probably still use Twitter to promote what I'm talking about, because I really don't have any other outlet at the moment. We'll see how it goes.
We'll solve that problem. We are creating exactly the solutions to all these problems. Within the next year, you're going to have a substantially better platform. Like, what you need as a content creator is the ability to broadcast what you're doing to your audience.
Yes.
That's what we're going to create that in a fundamentally better form on the blockchain. You will not be hooked into any particular app. We're creating protocols in the blockchain that are going to allow you to reach everyone. So you are going to own your data. You're not going to be locked into Twitter. I've had to exit Twitter because I have 27,000 followers. And unfortunately, Twitter is so bad, I have to abandon them. I'm not going to waste any more of my time dealing with the concentrated evil that is Twitter. Okay? I've got this graphic I created of, it is not a coincidence that Twitter is at the center of a circle of poop of San Francisco. San Francisco has a serious homelessness and public defecation problem, and people poop all over Twitter in reality. All over Twitter, they poop all over the neighborhood, and they poop all over Twitter.
It was
that's Sorry?
It was a delightful metaphor.
Yes, it's exactly what Twitter is. It's the center
Mhm.
of the circle of poop of San Francisco. It's the center of the circle of poop of the internet. It's the center of the circle of poop of the world. It is poop. It is where everybody goes to poop in public, and there's nothing of value there. You're eating poop, and stop eating poop.
I don't have any sort of comeback to that. So I think we'll just move on from that topic and maybe address your own quasi controversy last week, and that was concerning Paymail. So everyone got pretty excited about Paymail when you released it at the Toronto conference. Um, do you think that was all done well, the way you announced it, the way you launched it, and the way people responded to it?
I mean, we did a remarkable job. I mean, again, like you ask us, you're only 3 people. How the hell did you do that? Yeah, we did a remarkable job. And so that's why it's very irritating for people within the Bitcoin SV economy to criticize us based on their own misunderstanding of what it is that we even did. So as soon as we launched it, we had, I'll just say his name. His name's Jack Lew. Started basically, he just didn't understand what it was that we even did and started criticizing us on Twitter. Now, Jack Lew did not actually contact us privately. So we didn't get any messages from Jack Lew. He just started saying a bunch of misinformation on Twitter, stuff that it was simply inaccurate. Like, it's just, I'm not like, it's not real criticism. If you have real criticism, tell us what the criticism is. This was just a way for Jack Lew to get attention on Twitter, because that's how everybody uses Twitter. It's all about getting attention. It has nothing to do with the truth. You know, people don't care about, am I saying things that are true on Twitter? They care, am I getting attention? Because it's all about followers and retweets. That's all people care about. And Jack Lew, I've to this day not received a single private message from Jack Lew of any sort. It was just saying things publicly on Twitter. So there's no real criticism. I mean, there's nothing, we didn't do anything wrong. We did everything completely right, and far more right than people even understand, because we didn't even have time to explain everything. And we're not going to explain everything. We're just going to keep doing it and showing everyone how to do it. Because finally we have a protocol that's stable and scaling. We can just do all the things that I've been talking about for many years. So we're just going to do everything. And I'm not going to take time away from building it to try to explain it to people who are just going to bash us on Twitter. So that's part of why I'm angry at Twitter. Like, you can see that Twitter has become concentrated misinformation, concentrated evil, concentrated poop. It's terrible. So we got back to the Twitter again, but it does, because if you can't not talk about crypto, you can't not talk about Twitter. It keeps coming back to that, because the cryptocurrency world has decided to put all of the misinformation and terrible stuff on Twitter. It's the center of all of the terrible things.
You're making me feel bad about using Twitter at all, actually. I'm not even sure if I can log on to it after this.
Good.
Yeah, going back to Paymail, I think Jack Lew aside, I don't really want to comment on Jack, because, you know, I think it was like just a difference of business opinions. Like, that's always going to happen. There's always going to be rivalries, competition, and, you know, people who take issue with the way others do things. I really don't see any solution to that. But with Paymail, I think the only problem I saw was that people were a little confused about what it actually was. A lot of people thought it was an email address that you could use.
Well, let me just say, this is why it's a problem. I know that you say you don't want to talk about Jack Lew, but in order for people to understand, that's why it actually matters, because Jack Lew misinformed people. We didn't even have a chance to completely explain things, and Jack Lew is already going out there telling everyone a bunch of fake information that makes this just wrong.
Paymail will be talking to Jack in the next week or so, so he will maybe have a chance to reply to some of this just in advance.
Well, what Jack Lew needs to understand is, Jack Lew, I haven't received any private messaging from you whatsoever. So understand how this looks from my perspective. All he did was go out and bash us on Twitter, and that's it. I mean, if you have real criticism, how come I haven't received a single private message from Jack Lew? I don't even know who he is. He's the guy that bashed me on Twitter, and I was on a panel with him, and that's the extent of my knowledge. I don't even know who he is. Like, how come we didn't get him? So, I mean, anyway, what Paymail is just a way to add Bitcoin support to email. It's just a protocol exactly the same way email is a protocol. We solved every technical. The reason why we chose email as the center of the protocol is because people are already using email as their identity on the internet. You log into services with Google, you rely on things like Google Docs, you rely on your Gmail account as being your primary identity. If it's not Gmail, you might use Microsoft or something like that at your business, and you have an email account that you always are communicating with people with. You have an avatar associated with the email address. You sign documents with your email address. Your email address is your existing internet identity. Mm-hmm. And what we did was we added support for Bitcoin. We solved every technical problem around doing that. We called the new protocol, it's actually called BSV Alias is the name of the protocol.
That's right, yeah.
And we decided for marketing reasons, Alice Applegate came up with a very clever name, Paymail. It's a wonderful name. It's a perfect name for this. It's just an extension to email to support Bitcoin. And it allows you to do everything. So we actually solved every problem with identity at a protocol level. In the same way Bitcoin solves a bunch of other problems, we wanted to solve the identity problem in a way that allowed us to use identity every way we could think of. So we solved the problem for things like, signing data, encrypting data, sending encrypted messages, signing data on-chain, off-chain, being able to have contact lists that are shared, being able to follow people, being able to follow people on the blockchain, et cetera. And we haven't even announced all this stuff. We've designed so much stuff that it's going to be coming out in the next 6 months, 1 year. It'll take probably 2 years to finish implementing all of the things around Paymail that we're going to do. But we have solved at a protocol level identity. We have the correct way to solve identity. It's going to be very practical because everyone's already got their existing email. You're going to be able to add Paymail support to your existing email address. Yes, we're going to need to add it into places like Google and Microsoft. That's the plan. We're going to have Google and Microsoft. No, we're not in touch with them. We had to build it first. We're proving it first. We take it to Google in 1 year, 2 years, whenever it's appropriate, and we're going to solve identity for Google. You're going to have encrypted email for the first time inside Google, okay? You're going to have signed contracts inside Google, okay? You're going to have money inside Google because they're going to add support for Bitcoin. So that's the problem we solved with Paymail. It's far bigger than people realize. The market for names that we created has nothing to do with Paymail. That has to do with the fact that we have a naming system. How do you solve the problem of getting the right name to the right people? That's a market problem. The right way to solve, how do you get resource A to person A? Markets. Markets solve that problem. We created a market because I have studied economics and I understand enough about this stuff to realize the correct way to get the name John to whoever is the best person to have the name John is a market. That's how you get milk to the right person. It's how you get things like aluminum to the right person. Markets. We created a market for names. All it is. There's nothing, the criticism made no sense at all. It's just a marketplace. So the marketplace has nothing to do with Paymail. They're completely different things. But the marketplace solved the problem of how to distribute the names within our platform, and Paymail solves the problem of two different things.
And the names you were selling anyway, they were only the @moneybutton.com ID names. They weren't going to be cross-platform or cross-service or anything like that. I actually, just going back a minute, I really like the idea of signed contracts in email. No one's really talked about that yet.
Well, we're just going to show you because I'm sick of arguing with people on Twitter. Arguing with people on Twitter is how everyone in the cryptocurrency world is going to lose. They don't realize that what they're really doing is battling with each other. And the smart people are exiting Twitter. Stop wasting time on Twitter. Get off of Twitter. It's a giant waste of time. It's eating poop. So as they bicker with each other on Twitter, they have no idea what's actually going on. We're going to create real legal contracts inside email, solving real world problems. Finally, you're going to be able to do things like your Google account will be compatible with your Microsoft account. Your Microsoft account will be compatible with your bank account. Your bank account will be compatible with the contract that you signed with your investors. That will be compatible with everything that you do in your life. You'll be able to pay rent. You'll be able to create content collaborative with people all over the world. And everything will be signed, everything will be authentic, and everything will work. So we're solving every single one of these problems, and we're done explaining it to people. We're just going to show everyone. No more arguing, no more bickering on Twitter. We're going to show everyone how it's done because we have solved the base protocol, which is Bitcoin, and we're inventing new protocols on top that solve every single problem, and we're going to scale it to the entire world.
Well, in the end, that's really the only way to win an argument on the internet is just to succeed at what you're doing and prove to everyone that that's the one that they all should be using. Yeah. So yeah, all the best with that. And I think I confess I don't really understand the controversy of the market for names. I think some people thought when they logged in and realized that their unique handle had already been taken or already been bought, and they might have to pay someone to get it back. they weren't so
We
happy about.
created something new. We did not owe anyone a name. We created a new namespace. We owned the namespace. We sold it to people. When we create new products and services, when we create a new product, no one is owed that product. We sell it to you. Okay? We did not owe anyone any particular names. I got my name, Niga got his name, Jorge got her name. Everybody else bought their name. We sold it to people. You don't have an exclusive right to use the name John. Okay? Yeah. Other people have that name. So I don't know who owns John at moneybutton.com, but somebody bought it. We created something new. We sold it. There's no controversy.
For about 2 years at CoinDesk, I had a different email to everyone else because John Matonis worked there before I did, and he got John. And I never got the chance to buy it. I would have probably... Well, yeah,
you probably would have sold it, right? Wouldn't that be cool to be able to just buy the name and solve that problem using a marketplace?
Yeah, or at least the ability to transfer it anyway. How did you decide on 30% as MoneyButton's take?
I don't think the percentage matters too much. It needed to be a percentage that created a resistance for transfers. Paymail is not about earning money for our company. It's kind of a fluke that it was as successful as it was and people bought all the names. It's simply a way to distribute the names correctly. It's not our primary, well, it is our primary source of revenue right now, but it's not intended to be our primary source of revenue. It's just a marketplace for names to solve the name distribution problem. That's all it is. So 30% just, it's a figure that seemed acceptable. It seemed people were willing to sell them, and for us to get 30%, they get most of the money for selling it. It's a way of owning something where, you know, as we make the platform more useful, you feel like you have ownership over your thing. That should increase in value over time as we add features and things like that. We're not going to promise any particular features other than what I've said about signatures and encryption and stuff like that. But the idea is that, you know, 30% was good. We don't want people flipping them constantly. So we're not going to charge 0%. It's not about flipping them. You need to actually use it. And so it seemed like it created resistance to those transfers so that, you know, if someone wants to sell it for much higher, fine. But so they will trade them, but there's a bit of a resistance there. So I think, you know, it was kind of an educated guess that about 30% is about right. It creates resistance to trading. That's about it.
Just as a hypothetical, I know some people on eBay will spend years working up a good reputation and a 5-star rating on their name. Then they'll sell that name to someone who's a scammer. Do you have any safeguards to stop that happening with Paymail and MoneyButton?
Paymail is just a name. It is not your reputation. You are you. You cannot sell your reputation. Now, if you create a company, you can sell the company, but the company is not you. A company is a different thing than you. The names will be something that you can attach to a company, but the name is not you, it's the company. When Larry Page resigns from Google, it's not that Google suddenly drops to 0 reputation, because Google is an independent organization of Larry Page. Larry Page is not equivalent to Google. Larry Page is the former CEO of Google. That's all he is. So Google has a name and they own Google.com. That's going to continue to have an increasing reputation because, well, assuming they succeed and continue to succeed, because it's a company. So companies can have reputations too. That's fine. You can sell a company, but you cannot sell yourself to someone else.
Yeah. Although if you're using your email handle or email name as your identity, like that identity, if it's clean, could be worth something to someone with bad intentions.
We're not going to allow you, it makes no sense whatsoever to transfer a reputation to someone else. If you have a reputation, you have the reputation, not the name. Okay? You're not going to be transferring your 5-star rating to someone else. That's silliness. In fact, we didn't explicitly add that to the terms of service or anything, but that's not the goal here. And in fact, when it comes to creating features, like if we ever have a reputation system in the future, that will not be a part of this, right? Or it's clear that the reputation applies to the company, not the person. Then it's okay. But so long as people can understand that the ownership is transferred. But reputation for companies is okay, but that's not a person. You cannot transfer your personal reputation to a different person.
So will it be verifiable somewhere when a handle has changed hands?
Well, I mean, you know, we already solved this problem with domain names, right? I mean, ask yourself, what is the problem with domain names? No one seems like what we did was exactly the same thing, but better because you own it. Instead of paying $10 per year, it's whatever one-time fee, and now it's yours. We did it better than domain names.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the problem? I mean, is Google going to sell the name Google to another company? Of course not. Okay. If it's something that actually matters, then your name really matters. You're not going to just sell the name to some other company. Apple comes up and says, hey, Google, we like what you're doing. We want to buy your domain name from you. Are you freaking kidding me? Okay. Mm-hmm. Google is not going to sell google.com to Apple.
Yeah, okay? Probably not something.
If they do, they're selling the entire company to Apple, not just the name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's no problem here. This is all right. It's a property. If someone buys a restaurant from you, how does it work in the real world? Sometimes it's known, sometimes it's not known. It's kind of up to the people doing the deal and so on. But when it comes to things like, this is just not a new problem. It's exactly the same thing as domain names. It's exactly the same thing as real property, except better because it's a real marketplace of ownership. That you actually own the name. It's a one-time purchase, and you own it.
Yeah, it's real estate like everything else.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, then. Well, I know you've got guests coming soon and you probably have to go. So I just want to ask you, just before we wrap up, what's coming next?
Well, we're going to solve the onboarding problem. So our theme for this year is we're going to onboard the world. I don't think we'll onboard the entire world this year, but we will onboard the world ultimately. And this year, what we're going to do is have a solution to onboarding. So it's going to be the case that new people who sign up to MoneyButton who don't already have Bitcoin SV will be able to use MoneyButton. That's what we're solving this year.
How does that work? Oh, I guess
we're going to gift revenue to our users. So the revenue that we earn from Paymail and other sources is going to be gifted to new users. So they will get a small gift and they will be empowered to earn money. So we onboard them to the Bitcoin SV community. I should say the Bitcoin SV economy. They're going to realize how much better this is when you can actually start having real money inside of these sort of social applications on the internet. You're going to why would you continue using things like Twitter, which is completely fake and there's no money in there, when you can do things where it's money and you can price things and the value is real? That when you earn something, instead of earning followers or retweets or likes, likes are the worst one because it's pointless.
Mm-hmm.
You'll earn money that you can actually use in the real world to pay rent, money that you can use in the real world to buy food. And if you're living in Venezuela, money that you can use to escape Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So money, real, not fake likes on Twitter, real stuff. So that's the difference.
You proved that in a way with yours.org.
Yes.
Where a like is worth 25 cents or 10 cents or whatever people are charging for it.
Exactly. We're taking that and we're bringing it to everything. Yes.
Which reminds me, why is MoneyButton not integrated in yours.org?
Because we're 3 people and because we're focused and because it takes time to fix yours.org to use MoneyButton. When we created MoneyButton, the original idea was that they would be the same, but for various technical reasons and logistical reasons, we created an entirely new application. So it's just what happened. We will rope them back together again, and you will see probably this year that we're going to rope yours.org back into MoneyButton, and they will be merged again. Yours.org is at a corporate level, it's a part of the same thing. It's the same company.
Mm-hmm.
But at a technical level, they're just separate because of just logistics and history and all sorts of reasons we just didn't integrate them yet. And this is going to actually take a lot of time and effort to integrate them again. But we do plan to do so, and yours.org will become a part of MoneyButton.
Excellent. All right. Well, I certainly look forward to hearing what's coming up next. So, Ryan X. Charles, thanks a lot for joining us again, and see you again next time.
Great to talk to you, John. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed talking.